They say you should fear the wrath of a patient man, but what happens when that patience finally snaps and the saint turns into a monster? Where is the limit of kindness? Throughout history, some of the most revered figures were driven to the edge, choosing the most brutal paths for revenge. For years, they endured insults, watched their loved ones fall, and swallowed their pride. They were the ones who stayed silent while the world mocked them. But beneath that calm surface, a storm was brewing. Every insult was a spark, and every humiliation was fuel for a fire that would soon consume everything. When a person who spends their life being tolerant is pushed to the wall, their saintly vibe vanishes, replaced by a plan so cruel, even demons tremble. Today, as we explore the moments when historical icons lost their cool and showed the world exactly why you should never mistake their silence for total weakness, get ready for a journey into the dark side of devotion. This is the wrath of the patient, where mercy dies and the most creative vengeance begins. Our first story takes us to the 10th century, where a woman named Olga would redefine the meaning of a scorned widow in the most terrifying way. Meet Olga of Kiev, a woman whose story features the most brutal plot twist in church history. Her journey began with a tragedy that demanded blood. After the Drevlian tribe murdered her husband, Prince Igor, they thought they could simply take his land and force his widow into a new marriage. But Olga wasn't interested in tears. While she maintained a mask of calm, her mind was already weaving a web of death for every single killer. The Drevlians underestimated her, thinking a grieving woman was no threat. They sent messengers to her court, arrogant enough to propose a wedding to their prince. Yet the messengers arrived with heads held high, expecting a submissive woman. Instead, Olga greeted them with a cold smile and a very special, hidden invitation. She told them she would honor them by having them carried in their own boat the next day. The messengers felt like kings, unaware of the trap. The next morning, Olga's people carried the boat through the city. But instead of a palace, they marched toward a deep, dark trench, dug in the earth. As they reached the edge, the messengers realized too late that this wasn't a parade. It was a funeral, and they were the guests of honor. Olga stood over the pit as they were buried alive. She asked if they liked the honor she had bestowed upon them. There was no answer. That was only the beginning. She sent word to the Drevlian prince, asking for their most distinguished men to escort her back to their land properly. When the next group arrived, Olga suggested they wash up in the bathhouse first. They entered, looking for comfort after their long ride through the cold. As soon as the last man was inside, the doors were bolted from the outside. The sound of heavy beams sliding into place signaled their doom. Olga set the building on fire. She watched as her husband's killer's elite were reduced to ashes. Yet her thirst for vengeance was far from quenched. She then traveled to the Drevlian capital for a funeral feast. She acted the part of the grieving widow, serving wine until everyone was completely intoxicated. When 5,000 warriors were too drunk to defend themselves, Olga gave the signal. Her soldiers drew their blades, turning the feast into a total slaughter. 5,000 men died that night. Olga stood in the center of the carnage, a saint of shadow, proving that her mercy had died with Igor. Finally, she besieged their capital. Instead of gold, she made a strange request. 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from every house as a peaceful tribute. Yet the citizens were relieved, thinking the queen was finally showing mercy. They handed over the birds, never suspecting the creative horror she had planned for them. Olga ordered her men to tie burning tinder to the feet of every bird. As night fell, she released them, knowing exactly where they would go. The birds flew straight back to their nests in the thatched roofs and barns of the city. Within minutes, the entire capital was a literal inferno. There was no way to put out the fire, because every house started burning at the same time. The city of Iskorostan was erased from history. Olga's revenge was complete. She had destroyed an entire tribe with birds, fire, and a level of calculated cruelty that left the world in total shock. Ironically, she was later sainted, but her shadow remains a reminder. Never send a red flag to a powerful widow who has nothing left to lose. From the frozen north of Russia, we move to the battlefields of Japan. Here, the art of patience was mastered by a man named Tokugawa Ieyasu. If there were an Oscar for patience, Ieyasu would win it easily. He spent 40 years bowing to men who looked down on his humble appearance. He served the fierce Oda Nobunaga with absolute loyalty, becoming the ultimate professional waiter, waiting for his moment while the great leaders fought each other. Nobunaga was the fire, but Ieyasu was the slow-moving river. He knew that the hottest fires often burn themselves out before the water even begins to boil. The cost of his patience was high. He had to order his own wife and son to die just to prove his loyalty to a superior lord. His heart became encased in ice. He swallowed his grief and continued to bow, knowing that one day he would be the one holding the sword. Next came Hideyoshi, the great unifier. Ieyasu served him too, hiding his true power behind a mask of submissive friendship for over a decade of service. When Hideyoshi lay dying, he trusted Ieyasu to protect his young son. It was the moment Ieyasu had waited his entire life to finally seize control. The humble servant was gone. Ieyasu summoned his armies, revealing the tiger that had been sleeping within him for 40 long years of quiet submission. At the Battle of Sekigahara, the fate of Japan was decided. Ieyasu moved his pieces with the precision of a master who had memorized every move. His wrath wasn't a sudden explosion, but a cold, unstoppable force. He crushed his rivals, proving that the most dangerous enemy is the one who waits. Finally, he turned his sights on the last remnants of the Toyotomi clan at Osaka Castle. He showed no mercy to the family he once served. The stronghold burned, and with it, the last of his opposition. Ieyasu's long game had finally paid off with a total and absolute victory over Japan. His face, once so humble, now radiated the authority of a supreme ruler. But the man who bowed for 40 years finally had everyone bowing to him. The purge was systematic and absolute. Ieyasu ensured that no one would ever rise to challenge his family's authority again for centuries to come. He became the shogun, establishing a dynasty that would rule for over 250 years. His patience had built a lasting, ironclad empire. Peace returned to Japan, but it was a peace built on the bones of those who underestimated the fat, smiling man who knew how to wait. He often said that a man's life is like a long journey with a heavy load. He carried his burden until he could finally drop it. Every moment of suffering was a calculated investment. His brutality wasn't found in his sword, but in his ability to outlive and outweight every single enemy. The Edo period became a golden age of culture, all thanks to the cold, patient wrath of a man who refused to be broken by time. Ieyasu proved that the ultimate flex isn't being the strongest person in the room, it's being the only person left standing in the room. So, what have we learned from these saints of history? The most terrifying wrath doesn't come from natural villains, but from those who were once good. When a good person has endured enough, their internal compass shifts. The kindness that once defined them becomes the very tool they use for destruction. Olga and Ieyasu weren't born monsters. They were shaped by betrayal and loss, forged in the fires of patience until they became something much more dangerous. When the mask of the saint falls, the nightmare begins. History is littered with the ruins of those who thought they could push a good person. Remember, patience is not infinite. It has an expiration date, and once it passes, there is no going back to the way things were before. Don't push a sheep into a corner. You don't know how hungry the wolf inside it has become while waiting for the right moment to strike. Are you treating the patient people in your life with the respect they deserve? Or are you slowly waking up a monster you cannot control? Thanks for watching this dark journey through history. Don't forget to subscribe for more historical vibes that will keep you thinking all night long.